Hey everyone, this is the 2025 Halo Wars 2 leader ranking video. I usually do one of these every single year, so you can check out in the video description rankings I've done in years prior for different Halo Wars 2 leaders. Now, there's a few things to kind of get out of the way quickly. First is, even though the game doesn't receive any balance updates anymore, I still put a list out every single year because this is my subjective opinion. Leaders that I enjoy playing as the most in Teams multiplayer. So, of course, your opinion is going to differ from mine. And so let me know your thoughts of these leaders in this ranking in the comments down below. Let's go ahead and dive in. I'm going to start with the worst and work my way up to the best. Number 16, there's 16 leaders in Halo Wars 2. Number 16 is the Shipmaster. I don't think I need to explain why I have a hatred of the Shipmaster. I just do. Let's move on. Number 15, Serena. Now, Serena, I think, is really good when you stack Serena up with other leaders. I think that the cryoseismic is absolutely disgusting as it kind of gets better and better as you upgrade the leader power. However, I think just initially, Serena, there's just something with Serena that I cannot really get playing as that leader. I'm not very good playing as Serena. I seem to not do very well playing against Serena. But nonetheless, again, since this is my subjective list, I'm going to put Serena at 15. We've had some good games where we've done multiple Serena, like a triple Serena play, and it's been hilarious. I think the ice cream truck is such a good troll leader, hero unit, I should say. But other than that, I don't really find Serena all that exciting to play as. Number 14 is Kinsano. Kind of really the same reason as Serena is, I think Kinsano, she was actually one of the first DLC leaders outside of Sergeant Forge that Halo Wars 2 got. And I think it's just kind of a sign of when she was developed as a DLC character. I don't think the developers had as many grand ideas. You can see as they kind of get more and more chronologically released with these leaders that they get more creative, like Vortis compared to Kinsano, for example. Vortis is much more creative with his style and his leader wheel. Kinsano, I think the leader is hilariously awesome with the flame wall, especially at bases. I think that's really where it's most effective. Of course, on infantry as well. And the Inferno is really good to help you destroy a base. But outside of really those two leader powers and Hell Charge, there's really nothing that really excites me about Kinsano. I really had wished that we got Flame Siege with her siege turrets and Kodiaks, just like how Serena did. I think that would have been an easy thing for them to add. But nonetheless, Kinsano is at number 14. Number 13 is Captain Cutter. Captain Cutter, I think, should have received a change in the leader that was created. So we get Spartan Jerome as Captain Cutter. Of course, there's Jerome, the hero unit and leader that you can pick as well. But, Cutter's Jerome is just not as good as Jerome's Jerome. I think that what they should have done is when Operation Spearbreaker came out, they should have swapped Cutter's Jerome for the ODST squad that you control in Operation Spearbreaker. And in fact, they did do this for the Yappening, that weekend game mode that occurred, was it April Fool's weekend in 2018. I really wish that they would have just, kind of patched that in. That would have been a lot cooler. The Y ability is an EMP Mac from the hero unit. It's not a Spartan. I just think that would have been nice. But Cutter has a lot of great offensive drops. You got an ODST drop, the ODST Assault group, close air support, is it Archer missiles? I get Archer missiles mixed up with Kinsano. That's Napalm missiles. It's Archer missiles, the OP Cyclops drop, the turrets, the heals. There's just a lot of really good powers from Captain Cutter. I think really where I struggle with Captain Cutter is the leader wheel is really when you want to use these drops all the time. It's so expensive that I feel like I spend too much of my money on unit drops that may not make the difference in a battle. And I think it's a skill issue on my part. But nonetheless, Captain Cutter at 13. Number 12, it's the Arbiter. I like Arbiter a lot, especially we've put quite a few videos on the channel lately. You can check them out, where we've gone triple Arbiter and we do a plasma bolt on someone that stacks their gens and it instantly vaporizes those two buildings, those two gens. And you can stack it on top with maybe Decimus's Vortex that kind of debuffs the buildings, makes it really great for the Plasma Bolt. I like Arbiter's, I guess, variety in how his leader wheel kind of interacts with stacking Conduit and dropping your leader powers to kind of give Arbiter in units all of the buffs. Of course, Phantoms are some of my favorite unique units in Halo Wars 2, especially when you put Hunters in them. I think that that's really, really hilarious. But Arbiter, I'm just not very good with. Same with Shipmaster. I think it just has something to do with the hero unit himself. There's a lot of micro involved, and I do think Arbiter is one of the more difficult leaders to learn in Halo Wars 2. I would probably say the two most difficult ones to learn is Arbiter and Voidus, but nonetheless, Arbiter at number 12. Number 11 is Pavlom. I love Pavlom. I really thought that he was designed for Super Turtles. The Mega Turrets are really hilarious. I think that's probably one of the funniest things that they've added as a mechanic or a design implementation for a leader in Halo Wars 2. Of course, you've probably seen on the channel the troll plays in which you can steal an opponent's base, lock it, and then train the Pavlom hero unit so it heals the base, and then you can start putting mega turrets on it. It's really funny to try to defend that kind of play, especially too when you stack him with other leaders that really benefits Pavlom's leader wheel and design, much like Johnson. You could put Pavlom in a bunker. That's probably the peak of trolling in Halo Wars 2. I absolutely love that to death. But I do think that Pavlom is not as good of an offensive leader as he really thrives on defense. Of course, you do have the Wraith Invaders that we like to call the Ubers. That's a great unit, to kind of put your infantry units inside. The Lich Vanguard that you can drop is one of the best drops in the entire game, believe it or not, especially when you take advantage of training units out of the bubble. But I think Pavlom just kind of falls a little bit. You may not think about it, but even just one or two mega turrets can be quite impactful on your economy. So just be sure that, you're taking advantage of your economy as Pavlom with Burnout and making sure that you aren't overbuilding on mega turrets because Pavlom will fall behind in other leaders as the match kind of goes on. Number 10 is Jerome. Jerome's really good with his Mantis drop, especially if you can drop it on enemy units and stun them or cause additional damage. The Enduring Salvo drop is fantastic as well. And of course, a Mega Team is really, really strong. I just think that with Jerome specifically for my play style, I really would prefer to play other UNSC leaders. I think the way that the meta is in Halo Wars 2, where it really favors air, particularly vultures from UNSC, we don't really see anything that can kind of, increase the defense of those vultures. Maybe, there is the, whatever, I forget the name of it now, the leader power that gives all of the units a Vet 1 promotion when you drop it. That might be good on vultures, but really the best way you want to do it is combat salvage, vultures, or maybe even heavy metal for UNSC leaders. Jerome just doesn't have that. He has a great leader, one of the more difficult, expensive leaders to get out early in a game. But I think outside of that and a mega team, I don't find anything all that flashy about Jerome. That may sound maybe a little ironic, I guess. But, Jerome just isn't exciting to me as a leader. Number 9 is Isabelle. Isabelle is, I think, a underrated leader in the game. I think a lot of people don't play as Isabelle a lot, but Isabelle with Ghost of the Machine, it really is a game changer, especially if, sometimes it's actually smart if you're going to use Ghost of the Machine on an opponent's vehicle army to only take half of it. So you can, destroy half with the half that you stole from your opponent and then use your army to destroy the remaining half once Ghost of the Machine expires, I think is really smart. Or, I've had instances where you could take, your opponent's entire Vulture army and go back to their base and use the Y-Bomb, or, of course, stealing a Scarab or Condor with it. There are a lot of fantastic uses of Ghost of the Machine, and that's really where Isabelle shines Of course, Isabelle gets shielded tanks, scorpion tanks, and nightingales. That makes a really strong army comp, by the way, when you stack that with heavy metal and, of course, combat salvage vultures. The Macintosh is really great. Isabelle, in my opinion, has the best of, well, maybe not the best. Maybe Anders has the best of the three Spartans. Really, really good. I really like playing as Isabelle a lot. She's underrated for turtles, and I think underrated in the game in general. You should play as Isabelle more often. She's pretty good. Number 8, Anders. I love Anders for one reason and one reason only, and that is the Sentinel spam is amazing. If you can get in a game where your opponent is committed to ground and you get all of the upgrades in which your siege is spawning sentinels and you have additional benefits to like arc defense and all of the other sentinel abilities that Anders has, it really can be hilarious. Especially on games like Sentry or on Badlands, where it favors long distance and siege. And, as long as you can stop the air spam where they will transition to get out of you with your siege, if you can counter that and get your opponent to commit to the ground, it's going to be hilarious. So Anders is a lot of fun to play as. Number 6, I put Sergeant Forge. Sergeant Forge, I think, is the peak of vulture spamming because he has combat salvage, heavy metal vultures, but he also has things too like Grizzly Battalion, which I think is the best way to drop Grizzlies. I know that Grizzlies really aren't they're either not as good as Scorpion tanks or they're right as good as Scorpion tanks, and it doesn't really justify the increased cost and population impact. It's just better to drop Grizzly Battalion to get them vetted. You get the Pelican gunship support as well. And I think the Forge hero unit is really good too. The Scatter Bomb, we like to call the Lag Bomb, it's pretty awesome to drop. And I just think Forge is all around a pretty strong leader. So I think Sergeant Forge is a no-brainer pick, and he's really good. Next up, I put Yap Yap. He is probably one of my favorite banished leaders to play as in Halo Wars 2. Just the idea of Yap Yap is really hilarious. I think that he's just a better designed leader wheel compared to Captain Cutter. I feel like there's a lot of similarities to Yap Yap's leader wheel to Captain Cutter. There's a lot of offensive abilities. He has 2 different turret drops. He has the beam, of course. He has his ultimate ability is effectively Forge's Scatter Bomb, but with methane. You can, of course, get methane wagons. Your grunt mechs, the hero unit for Yap Yap, is, in my opinion, the 3 best leaders in the entire game in regards to their Y ability. There are many instances in shorts on the channel, too, showing this, that even with something with as much health as a Scarab, you stack the 3 of those Y abilities to heal a Scarab. It can go all the way from being in red all the way up to maximum health. It can cancel out a Vulture Y bomb if you do it correctly. It's just the Y ability for Yap Yap is absolutely insane. It's completely broken, in my opinion. There is no other Y ability in the game that is comparable to Yap Yap's Y ability, and he is just simply fantastic, and I think he's a great leader. You're going to be committed to infantry, of course. That's really where he shines. So you might get a little overpowered as the game goes on, as your opponents transition into air and more stronger vehicles. But I do think if you stay committed to it and you use the best of his abilities to complement your infantry, you're going to be successful. He is a really great leader. Moving on is Colony. I know Colony is probably the most favored, probably one of the highest picked leaders in Halo Wars 2. I think that from a design perspective, from creativity, and just absolutely nailing what fans wanted in Halo Wars 2, I think 343 really knocked it out of the park with Colony, or Creative Assembly if you want to get specific with the design of Halo Wars 2. But nonetheless, I think Colony is probably the best way that they've designed a new creative leader in Halo Wars 2. Starting with the Hunter Captain is absolutely awesome. Moving on to the Goliaths, I think is really cool. And attaching skitters to your units, making them stronger, and having different limits on different units that can have them attached to. So like an engineer can only have one, but a scarab can have three. And then you move on even further with vehicle symbiotes, the hunter's brand, the engineer healing swarm, even the wall that colony can drop. It's just so unique and so awesome. I really adore playing as colony, and I think he started out as a strong leader in Halo Wars 2, and he's kind of always been that way. When you play as colony, there's so many different ways that you can have a wide variety of unit compositions. You're not really just limited to one thing. Like I had just talked about how Yap Yap really favors infantry. When you play as colony, you actually have like the whole variety of units to pick from. You've seen many games on the channel where we do engineer skitters as a Tech 1 opener, where it's air that attacks but also heals each other at the same time. That's a really strong comp. You could also open up with Goliaths and skitters. Like, that's a good comp. You could open up with a hero. That's really strong too. When you get into Tech 2, you could go Marauders. You could go air. When you get into the later techs, you could go Wraiths. Or even if you want to combat anti-air, you want to go anti-air to combat air spam, you could go Reavers with vehicle symbiotes and skitters on top of those too. He's just so good. You could turtle with colony. You can rush as colony. He might be probably, if you were only buying one DLC leader, probably be colony, be my recommendation. Okay, we're moving on to the top 4 here, and I know I've been rambling for a while, so I'll try to speed this up a little bit. Number 4 is Johnson. He's my favorite UNSC leader. I think the Mantises are overwhelmingly fun to play as. The Colossus, which I like to call the Gundams, are probably the coolest individual new unit added into Halo Wars 2, especially with things like Mech Overcharge, the absolute range and health that Goliaths have. In my opinion, Johnson is the best leader to Super Turtle as in Halo Wars 2 when your opponent picks when your teammate picks a banished leader to complement you. So if you're going to play, I think the two best Super Turtle leaders as a team is Johnson, Atriox. I've gone into other videos in the past into why that is. I don't want to ramble too much specifically on Super Turtling, but I think Johnson, despite to what the community says, I think he's probably the best that the UNSC offers, personally, in my opinion. Number 3 is Atriox. Atriox is really strong, and I'm glad that he's one of those base leaders that you get when you buy the game. His hero doesn't have a Y ability, and I think that's just because that leader is really strong as it is, and it doesn't necessarily need that. His leader wheel is unique for the Banished, and, again, he's good at offense, and he's good at defense too. Not as good as Colony, in my opinion, as an offensive leader. I think he's actually a little bit better defensively with the Bulwark, how it can just cancel out a Vulture Y ability. But Atriox is really great. Number 2, I have Decimus. I mean, so many of you go the Deci cringe air spam, and it drives me nuts, and it's a vendetta I have on the channel to prove that is entirely defeatable, and you can do it pretty quickly. You know what? Air can actually get out of control, specifically with Decimus, if you really kind of get your eco knocked down pretty well, and he's pumping out a whole bunch of Banshees, and he gets Boundless Fury and Boundless Siphon. He can be a serious problem. And I do think that if you want to go air and bother your opponents to no end, Decimus is the way to go. Maybe Colony as well with combat repair, but Decimus is the peak of trolling with air spam in Halo Wars 2. Finally, number 1, I think the best leader in Halo Wars 2, I think for a few years in a row now, is Vordis. And there's one reason and one reason alone, and that is combat spoils. It is just absolutely broken. It's the strongest passive ability in Halo Wars 2. If you're going to be an offensive player and you want to be completely ahead of the game in any way, shape, or form, you go combat spoils and you rush your opponent and attack their gens. There are videos on the channel of me getting into Tech 3 in 7 or 8 minutes on one gen, and I'm continuously pumping out infantry and sending them to my opponent over and over and over again. And that's because combat spoils is absolutely broken. Once you get out of bothering your opponent early on in the game and you are changing your composition, you really lean into the strength of the infusion. The Maelstrom Cataclysm is a game-changing ability. You can stack that with other abilities too from your leaders, something like a Maelstrom Beam or a Maelstrom Eradication. Vortis is absolutely unstoppable when you really utilize his leader wheel and composition from combat spoils into infusion. It is insane, and he's the best leader in Halo Wars 2, in my opinion. Okay, there you go. 16 leaders, 16 rankings in Halo Wars 2. Let me know how bad this list was in the comments down below. You can see how bad my takes have been for 4, 5, 6 years now. I'll put all of the previous leader ranking videos in the description for you to check out. And we are uploading Halo Wars 2 games all the time. Still doing it in 2025. And we have a Discord server with about 6,000 players. If you want to find someone to play Halo Wars 2 with, go ahead and check that out. And thank you all so much for watching, everybody. I'll see you, James.